Honor from hearing from the one and only me, Jacob T. Carroll I. Alright, so like Robert and probably most of you, I had some difficulties when choosing what my speech was going to be. It's like, oh, this is a really good idea, and then I was like, oh crap, I don't have a story for that, and it's not going to work out. And so I kind of had to really put some thought into it, and eventually, after all the trouble, I decided to go with making choices as my speech. I thought it was kind of fitting, since I was having difficulties making the choice, that I could go with that. How many of you, when choosing your speech, kind of didn't know what to do and you just kind of picked something and went with it? Right, show of hands. Yep, that's a lot of people. That's kind of what I did to some extent. But how many people did that when choosing their major? Or something major in their life? Major life decision, you kind of just picked something and went with it. And so that's something I've done before, and that's something that I'm trying to fix, that I really want to be able to evaluate and try making proper decisions. And so my goal today is to tell you about one of the major life decisions I've had to make and how I learned how to make decisions rationally and compare that to making decisions emotionally. So we're going to go back a little bit in time. I'm in high school, and I was a member of a church, and I was really ambitious in my church and doing a lot of studying stuff, and eventually I came to some questions I saw in this church, and they were really problematic to me, and I was like, oh, this is kind of an issue. So I decided to go talk to someone about the issues I saw, and when I went and talked to them, they said something, I was like, oh, that's even worse. And so it's kind of an issue I saw there, but then I said, oh no, this church is true, therefore I know that these problems are invalid, and so I just ignored them, and basically. And I was kind of falling subject to something I know as confirmation bias. It's when you think something to be true, you kind of look at everything to look at it like it's true. So, saw the confirmation bias there. I know a lot of you probably are subject to confirmation bias. Cameron, in her story, initially was facing some confirmation bias with her boyfriend when she wanted to make things look like they were good for him. But luckily, she was able to overcome that and able to get out of that situation. So, and go on a little bit more in my life. Several months passed. I'm reaching towards the end of my senior year, and I read a book. And this book is called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. Probably none of you have ever heard of it. It's a fan fiction. I'm not going to get into too much. It is the best book I've ever read. It's taught me a lot about looking at things rationally and stuff. It's very different from the Harry Potter series, but it was really good. I thought it was hilarious, and so this book really taught me how to evaluate things rationally. At this point, though, I didn't realize the mistakes I was making with my church back before. I kind of had a wake-up call when my brother kind of had some problems with the church and was leaving it, and there was a big conflict with his family because he was married and had 2 kids at the time, and so that was a really big issue. And I got worried that if I didn't address those issues, then that would become a problem for me when I had a family, and I wanted to be able to be bonded with my family. I didn't want there to be any issues, and so I started to really bring up those things I had before and look into them. And with my new rational thinking I would apply from reading that book, I was able to realize that the church I was attending was not true. And so this was kind of a big deal because I'd spent my whole growing up youth life in the church, and I believe that I did learn a lot of great things from that church. And so the big problem, though, was having to tell my friends, my family, my girlfriend, that I was leaving this church. And it was a really hard decision. How many of you have had to make a decision that you knew was going to hurt somebody, but you had to do it anyways because it was the right thing? That's good. A lot of you can relate to that. And so this was really hard for me to do just because I didn't like thinking. So eventually, though, I did end up having to tell my mother and tell my girlfriend. I lost my girlfriend because of this. My mother, I'm sure, had many sleepless, tearful nights, and it was really hard on me to be able to go through with that because of the pain I was causing them. But it was something I was able to do because I knew it was what I believed to be true. And so that's what I want to talk about, being able to look at things rationally. And when you're looking at things rationally, you don't want to be able to be biased in any way. You want to be able to look at evidence, evaluate it. And I think when you're able to look at a situation rationally, then you're able to make a decision that's going to be better for you in the long run. I know these emotions come up and it makes it really hard to make the right choice. In my audience analysis, I saw that each of you guys, it was kind of split between a lot of you did rationally and there were some that made their decisions emotionally. And I don't necessarily think emotional decisions are a bad thing. I think the big problem comes when your emotional decision really conflicts with what you're going to try and do rationally. I think at times in my life I still want to follow what I emotionally will feel is right, but at times if everything rational is conflicting that, sometimes you need to be willing to address that issue. So, in summary, I told you about my story about having to make a big decision in my life. It was a very rational decision, and I think I turned out a lot better for that decision. I'm really happy now. Emotionally, I am okay because I followed through with that rational decision. That's one thing I've learned, that if it's the right decision, it's going to feel good emotionally after you follow through rationally after a little while. So I'm going to challenge all of you to look at your decisions rationally, and your emotions are good and to help them influence your decisions, but make sure that you're not going to let that overwhelm you and make terrible choices. So thank you for listening to me today.